everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started because the important people are here. And I want to thank you for coming out on a yucky, icky, cold day. But New England is showing us what New England is all about. 4 seasons, and we're getting close to winter. So this is just a little taste. My name is Elisa Kaplan. I think I've introduced myself to all the people I don't already know. It's good to see old friends and new friends and Stanford people and Greenwich people. And it's just great having everyone here at Temple Shalom. I want to thank them for all their help. And they made it very easy for us to come here today. We are in the month of December in the secular calendar, and we are in the month of Kislev. It sounds like a kiss, for the Jewish calendar. And Hanukkah falls on the same day every year in the Jewish calendar, but it moves around in the secular calendar. And like its gift-giving counterpart, Hanukkah always occurs on the 25th day of Kislev, just like Christmas occurs on the 25th day of December. Both sort of arbitrarily assigned to those dates. And this year, December 1st and Kislev 1st matched up. It sort of does that it's a prime number thing in math. We need Ann Peskin here for that. But anyway, so we're matched up, and Hanukkah is December 24th, and Marianne, thank you for writing your books, and thank you, and we have them here. They're great Hanukkah, Christmas, winter, birthday presents, and it's okay if we read them too. Many thanks to Marcy Schoenfeld, Mars, my partner in crime. Yay! She's our caterer. She's the Vice President of Education and Programming for the Jewish Historical Society, and she produced this program. And a very special hand for Louise Stern. Yay. And we're delighted that Louise Stern decided to go to Smith College at the same time, much later than Ann Hoberman, and they got to be friends. And Louise brought Ann Hoberman in for an oral history at the Jewish Historical Society, and that's part of our business. We make oral histories. We are interested in each person who lives in Fairfield County. We're interested in your story because every person is a walking encyclopedia of personal history. So if you are at all interested in giving us your story, we will film you and give you a copy, as long as you let us keep a copy in our archives. We have over 150 oral histories, not counting all the old ones that were done ages ago before electricity. I'm happy to add your story to the ever-growing story of Jews in Fairfield County. So, and a little commercial, if you're not a member of the Jewish Historical Society, $36 a year is not a lot, and we'd love for you to join us so that we can keep all of our programs free and open to the community. There are blue cards on the table outside with all of our book talks. The third Wednesday of every month, we have a book talk at the Stanford JCC. And coming up on December 21st, very close to Christmas and Hanukkah, is a book a review of a book called The Un-Americans by Bob Abrams, who is a teacher at Bicultural Day School, will be presenting this book in his very academic and really fun way. And it's a story of 4 different short stories about 4 different immigrant experiences of people who live in New York City. Very good book. In January, we are privileged to have more Greenwich people presenting a program, but they're going to do it in Stanford at Temple Bethel, and it's called Jews and Sales. Now that sounds like a Christmas Hanukkah program, but it's S-A-I-L-S. So if you've ever been on a boat or wanted to be on a boat or wanted to watch people on a boat, you'd be interested in hearing Elaine and Soya Marks. I don't know if any of you know them. story about the boat, their sailboat, which they bought from Christopher Reeves, Superman, and their adventures going up to Newfoundland and further north, and the Jewish communities that they met and interacted with along the way while they were sailing. That was, of course, summer stuff. And since it's January, that's going to warm us up. So those are two programs that we have coming up, and we hope you'll be able to join us. What about Jews in Connecticut? Well, we have a very famous Jewish Connecticut Greenwich citizen here today, Ann Hoberman, but even before she moved here, ages of centuries ago, Jews have lived in Connecticut for over 350 years. See, Marianne, Jews were here before even you. And the earliest reference to a Jew in Connecticut is found in an entry on November 9th, 1659, in the General Court in Hartford, of one named David the Jew, and he was arrested for peddling. Now, how many people have in your background a grandfather, great-grandfather who was a peddler? Yeah, right, okay, that's what we did. All right, so we've been around for at least 1659 here in Connecticut. And the first Jewish congregations on record are Bethel of Hartford, which was Jews started attending in 1839, and Mishkan Israel of New Haven in 1840. Have you been there to either of those? Yeah. Okay. But most Jews came to Connecticut in the 20th century, between 1890 and 1920, with the great wave of immigration. In 1916, 10 Jewish families met to establish a Jewish house of worship right here. Well, it wasn't on this spot, but in Greenwich. And in 1917, they formally founded the Greenwich Hebrew Institute, which is now Temple Shalom, celebrating its 100th year. 100 years of Jews in Greenwich. Okay, wow, that even gets to me. I'm getting a little verklempt. Okay, the Jewish population in 1899 was 6,000. And I bet they all knew each other, right? And the latest figures that I had were 2015. How many Jews do you think there are in Connecticut? The whole state.
Depends on definition.
What, Jewish?
Jewish.
They have to be identified themselves as Jews, I guess.
Okay. 97,000. Okay, you feeling a little better? Which is 3% of the Connecticut population. All right, according to the Wall Street Journal, Greenwich, I'm quoting the Wall Street Journal from 2015, it's not a super recent quote, but Greenwich, still known for its blue-blooded families and sprawling mansions, has at least 4 formal Jewish congregations serving this town of 61,000 residents. Jews make up about 11%. So there's a little over 6,000 Jews living here in Greenwich.
Wow.
So we gotta find them and bring them in here. Okay. So the Greenwich Historical Society is getting ready for an exhibition on the Jews of Greenwich. And we have Joy Land, want to raise your hand? There's Joy in the back, who's here from the Greenwich Historical Society. And they've been collecting documents and even clothing and pictures. If you want to talk to Joy about that exhibit, it's going to open in the fall, and it's going to be at the Bush Holly House. So, or if you just want to find out, like, why are we having an exhibit about Jews in Greenwich, Joy is here to answer those questions after the program. So, so now on to the most famous Greenwich Jewish resident in the room.
Oh, come on.
Our speaker.
In the room.
In the room. I know. I would say it was me, but I wouldn't say it. Okay. Ann Hoberman, luckily, is a Stanford native, although not born in Stanford.
I was.
Oh, you were actually born in Stanford. Okay. But she's lived in Greenwich for many years. I think they were putting electricity in when she moved here. Okay. And she raised her family here. She is the critically acclaimed author of over 40 books for children. I don't know, where does all that come from? You're going to tell us. Including the beloved A House is a House for Me, and which won the National Book Award. 100 of Ms. Hoberman's, Mary Ann's poems are collected in The Llama Who Had No Pajama, and I hope I said that in the correct trope. Other favorite Hoberman titles include The Seven Silly Eaters, which we have here today, and You Read to Me, I'll Read to You series. So Mary Ann Hoberman also received the 2003 Award for Excellence in Poetry for Children, given by the National Council of Teachers of English. And we know how picky they are. So Mary Ann Hoberman began her writing career in high school, and where she wrote for the school newspaper and edited the high school yearbook, something she and I have in common, but I have not written 40 books, but there's still time. Okay. After receiving a BA in history from Smith College, I'll let you give the year, she pursued an MA in English literature from Yale University. And that was 35 years after the first degree, proving that, tomorrow's another day and on, keep going. In addition to writing, Mary Ann Hoberman has taught writing and literature from elementary through college level. And she co-founded and performed with the Pocket People, a children's theater group, and Women's Voices, a group giving dramatized poetry readings. And Mary Ann Hoberman said when she was a child, she realized that the books she was reading were actually written by real people. And so that kind of gave her the insight to do what she ended up making a beautiful career of. And from the people who live in Stanford, Mary Ann Hoberman's brother is very well known to us, Joel Friedman, as for his support and housing the Jewish Arts and Film Festival of Fairfield County in his theater, the State Theater. So it's a family with a love of arts. So it's an honor and pleasure to find out all the inside scoop of Mary Ann Hoberman.
Wow, thank you.
You're welcome.
I graduated from Smith in 1951, it's no secret. Okay. Hi, everybody. This is very nice. I'm really happy to be here. I love Stanford. And I was born in Stanford, in the Stanford Hospital. But then we moved away for about 5 years and during the Depression. And so that's the confusing thing. We moved away when I was just 15 months old. But I came back when I was 5. What I thought I'd do today, because I was asked here because I had given an interview with the, what was then I guess the Stanford Historical Society, which has sort of become the Fairfield Historical Society, the name changed, anyway. And so I thought I think that's why you asked me as well, because I wrote a book, my only novel, about 45 books, but this is my only novel. I had wanted when I was growing up to write the great American novel. This is not it. But anyway, I got it done, which is always a satisfaction. And it's called Strawberry Hill, and it's after Strawberry Hill Court and Strawberry Hill Avenue in Stanford. So it started off, I thought I was going to write a grown-up memoir of growing up in Stanford. I started out that way, but the voice wasn't right. And I ended up writing in the first person, it turned out to be a novel. And initially, in this first chapter, I'm going to read you the first chapter to kind of make my way into this talk. Initially, I thought that I was going to keep it pretty close to home and write a lot about myself. But when you're a writer, as some of you probably know, and all of you as readers know, sometimes the book gets away from you and the character does too. So it ended up not exactly the way I thought it would, but it did end up as kind of a love note to Stanford. And so I'll start right now. And it's dedicated to my younger brother, who was just mentioned, Joel, beloved little brother. He isn't so beloved in the book. Okay, so this is the way it starts. Chapter 1. You would have thought it was the best news in the world. Guess what, my mother said, with a big smile on her face, hanging up the phone. Daddy's found a house to rent in Stamford. Just think, she went on when I didn't say anything, you'll be able to have your own room and Daddy will live with us all the time. Isn't that wonderful? Right now, my father only lived with us on weekends. That was because we lived in New Haven and he worked in Stamford, which was too far away to come home from every night. So he lived in the Roger Smith Hotel during the week. It was the Depression, which meant jobs were very hard to get. So when he lost his old job in New Haven and found a new job in Stamford, he had to take it. He said he was really lucky because lots of fathers didn't have any jobs at all. I don't want to move, I said. You don't want to have your own room and your own yard and have Daddy live with us all the time, she asked. I like it here, I said. Besides, I'm the only one that plays in the yard anyway, except for Danny and Ruthie. Danny was my little brother. Ruthie Greenberg lived upstairs and was my best friend. Her parents owned the house. I knew my mother didn't like living in the Greenbergs' house as much as I did. She was always complaining that our apartment was too small and that it was noisy. And she said Mrs. Greenberg didn't keep her apartment clean enough. My mother kept ours really clean. Mrs. Greenberg told me once that you could eat off our kitchen floor. You can eat off mine too, she said, laughing. There's certainly enough food there. Mrs. Greenberg was really funny, and besides, it was true. But that was because everybody was always sitting around her kitchen table, drinking tea and eating sponge cake and cracking nuts and talking. So lots of crumbs and shells would fall on the floor. I loved the Greenbergs. They were a big family. Besides Ruthie, who was the youngest and the only girl, there were 4 big brothers. My favorite was Sidney. He was always telling me new knock-knock jokes, which I would tell everybody at school. When my father came home on Friday night, my mother gave him a big hug. What do you think, Allie? He asked. Aren't you looking forward to having your own room? I guess so, I said. Actually, I didn't mind very much sleeping with Daddy. We had a great big bed, and sometimes when he woke up at night, I would make up stories for him. You don't sound very enthusiastic, my father said. She doesn't want to leave the Greenbergs, my mother said, sounding annoyed. She didn't like it when I spent too much time upstairs. She thought Ruthie was a bad influence on me because sometimes she used swear words that her brothers had taught her. What if I don't like my new school, I asked. Of course you'll like it, my father said. How did he know? I thought. He'd never even seen it. What about the house, Danny asked. My father told us that it had 6 rooms and 2 bathrooms and a cellar and an attic and a garage and a screened-in back porch and a big backyard. And there was a brick fireplace in the living room. Can we toast marshmallows, Danny asked in an excited voice. I don't see why not, my father said. And there's another good thing, he added. Our street's a dead end, so there's hardly any traffic. What's at the end of it, I asked. A great big field. I asked him the name of the street. Strawberry Hill, my father said. Our new address is 12 Strawberry Hill. And then the next chapter begins, Strawberry Hill. I was going to live on a street called Strawberry Hill. All of a sudden, they didn't mind moving so much. So we did move to Strawberry Hill Court. How many of you go way back in Stamford? Yeah? 19, well, that's... Yes?
I came here from 1957.
Okay, that's back quite a ways. Yes?
Someone back here.
Well,
Yeah.
Alan is more than I.
1940, I was.
In 1943.
Okay,
But she's 6 generations.
Yeah.
yeah, because that's your age, yes?
No.
I was born in 1930, so I'm writing about the Depression and the years, I lived there till the beginning of the, right through the war years in the 40s.
What was the real address?
I don't remember the exact address on Strawberry Hill, but do you remember Strawberry Hill before they made the passage through
Strawberry Hill Court.
Strawberry Hill Court?
Yeah.
because, so our house was, say, 3 down on your left. Did anyone know the Shermans, Joe and Gertrude Sherman? Okay. All right, they lived in the, ours was the 4th on the left, they lived in the 2nd on the left. Bruce Sherman, right?
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, so far in this book, that's pretty close to exactly what happened, except that the little girl in this book, Allie, who tells the story, is 10 years old. I was not quite, let's see, I guess I was 5 years old when my father came home and told us about this. So I set the story. We by then had lived on West Broad Street. We only lived on Strawberry Hill for 1 year, and I never have forgotten it. And everything is so vivid about that and that excitement. We're going to live on Strawberry Hill. And anyway, so I thought starting there, I kind of talked to you about my experience in Stanford, the things that have stayed the same, the things that have changed, the things that are sort of still somewhat the same and somewhat changed. It was a wonderful town to grow up in. I called my nephew this morning, Richard, Joel's son, who still lives there. And I think now is the chair of the Board of Estimate, and whatever the Board of Taxation in Stanford. Finance, that's right, here is the estimate